UK and now Amphibious Force celebrated their 50th anniversary. The All Arms Commando course stood out for me as really demanding, and you have to be able to endure. You don't need a lot of muscles, you need endurance. I'm actually average. I'm not the best runner, I'm not the strongest in the fitness, but I'm capable of learning fast, and that's important because it's about the guy who can do it all good enough. Run, climb, be fast on the obstacle course, go on for a long time without food, without sleep. Basic soldiering was really something I learned from the British Marines. Thank you for that, because you need that. After I went on deployments like Afghanistan, nobody's looking at you anymore. The discipline, even if you're very tired after a mission of 5 days, think you have a few hours of sleep, but you don't, because you start cleaning your weapon and just have to finish the job. If you don't do the basic stuff, there's no sleeping for you. That's something that stays with me for the rest of my life. The most important development we see in warfare is that it's almost impossible to not be seen. The way you operate, you have to have people who are capable in a small unit to stay off the grid for a long time.
And you decided to attempt NLMARSOF selection.
They really shake the tree. It's really tough. That was 43 weeks of training. So I made it through, and I became Platoon Commander of the counter-terrorist unit for 4 years.
A lot of close quarter skills, I would imagine.
Yeah, the part of the counter-terrorist training was about 17 weeks of only shooting, and only one day shooting, the other day doing tactics.
I am joined by Marc Pollen. Marc, thanks very much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Ferdy. Very nice to be here.
Now, I know Marc Pollen from his podcast, Scherpschutters. He is one of the foremost Dutch military podcasters, but obviously the audience will be less familiar with him because I'm based in the UK and my audience is mainly from the UK and Australia and the US. So a bit of an introduction of Marc, who is kind enough to join me today. He served 13 years in the Corps Mariniers, the Dutch Marines, and he deployed to Afghanistan in 2008, obviously very kinetic time in the GWOT. He went on to pass NLMARSOF selection, the Dutch Maritime Special Forces. You then became and apologies for going through your whole military CV, but you became Platoon Commander of the Maritime Special Intervention Unit, M Squadron, which is responsible for counter-terrorism and direct action interventions overseas and domestic. Well, actually, that's a question that I have for you. Is the M Squadron mainly used for domestic counter-terrorism, or is it also deployed overseas?
Officially, it's basically like this. The M Squadron, their main job is domestic counter-terrorist within the Dienst Speciale Interventies. That's together with the blue guys and also commandos from the army. It's like a joint task force for counter-terrorist operations, domestic. Our frogmen and our mountain leaders, they are also trained in the UK. Also do international special forces missions, like in Afghanistan, they did Task Force 55 and also Viper. So it depends on the period and what's demanded of us. And we have 2 special forces units in the Netherlands. That's the NLMARSOF, where I was part of the Corps Commando Troepen. They are the commandos of the army. So that are the 2 special forces units officially in the Netherlands.
Excellent. Thanks very much for clarifying. You went on to serve also in hostage rescue boardings in terms of maritime security in Somalia. Is that right?
Yeah, well, not in Somalia, but the coastline in the north of Africa. The anti-piracy missions has been a very important part for a long time, because it was a big problem for the ships coming through there. And the Marines and also our Navy has been engaging in a lot of missions there. And I was part of an enhanced boarding element where I was the commander. And our unit, in the beginning, it was only special forces guys, but because the violence became harder, actually the resistance from the pirates became tougher, we decided to make an enhanced boarding element that was a special forces unit with snipers and a commanding element, and also some Marines, so the regular Marines. So we had a sort of working together, and I was leading that mission for a few months. And in that time, we did a lot of boardings. And one boarding where we had to free a few hostages.
That's amazing. You know what? For those who are interested, there's a video here of my interview with Wayne Harrison, formerly of 23 SAS, who continued his civilian career as a security contractor and runs a private maritime security consulting firm to this day. And he describes how he was, well, I think he's been on the receiving end, I think, of 2 incidents. One of them, they were in the Citadel. They had pirates on board and they were actually rescued by a Dutch ship. But this will be interesting. And Wayne, I know you'll be watching, because Wayne was saying to me, he was surprised that the Marines didn't come on board and the pirates had already boarded. And we had a little pre-chat, Mark, and you actually explained to me what the reason is that once the pirates were on board, how the rules of engagement were. Maybe you can explain that a bit.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a development around the rules of engagement in that mission. We have a very famous case. If you Google the Taipan and the Dutch Marines, you will find one of my teams that I was leading back then. I wasn't with them because the teams, that was in the period where the teams went with a small unit to the area, and I stayed behind in the Netherlands back then. But they attacked the Taipan. It was a big ship, and the crew was in the Citadel. So they went on by the helicopters shooting, and then with 6 people, well, actually 5, because one guy got injured during the fast roping. So 5.5 Marines. They went forward and they freed, well, they captured 10 pirates in that mission. But in that mission, the commander of the Navy took a really big risk, and he had some elements that were working for them why they got approval to get that mission going, because there was a very big risk. And after that mission, basically we were a bit contained. So we had to get the pirates before they got on board of the ship. Once they were on board of the ship, a different rules of engagement entered, and we weren't allowed basically to do anything. So for us, it was very important to be quick. So the helicopters seeing a big area, what was going on. And once we had a few elements that was showing they were pirates and on the verge of attack, we had to be very quick and make sure we were in the area and get them before they got on board of the ships.
That's a really interesting coincidence that I had a guest who was on the other end of that and absolutely was rescued by the Dutch Navy, because he mentioned in his case, when the Dutch Navy showed up and they would have done some warnings, and I think he said helicopters flying low overhead, and the pirates got spooked. So they left the area, and he and his security element were actually unarmed, a very particular job where this was actually before it was widely allowed to carry weapons for private security contractors. So they had to clear the ship unarmed, but they were very experienced military contractors. Although obviously the Navy had said we don't see anyone, we don't see any anymore. Very long story short, really interesting to hear that from both sides. You actually then, in your service, you also went on to train with the French Foreign Legion at their jungle warfare school deep inside the Amazonian equatorial forest in French Guiana. After your service, you became an entrepreneur and now run the foremost military podcast in the Netherlands. But right before all that, you went on another course, the All Arms Commander course, conducted as one of the foremost elite infantry training establishment in the world, Commander Training Center, Royal Marines, Lympstone. So before we get into that, can you tell us a bit about your early life and how you came to attempt, how you came up with the idea really to become a Dutch Marine officer?
Yeah, sure. Before I get into that, I want to make one disclaimer. I did a lot of international training. I trained in the cold with the Norwegian. I trained with parachute jumping with the Belgium. I trained with the All Arms Commander course with the English Marines. And I also went to the French Foreign Legion for a training. And that's the only training I didn't finish. I was just back from Afghanistan. In 2008 I came back from Afghanistan, and 6 weeks later I had to go to the French Foreign Legion. After 8 weeks I terminated my entry, so I wanted to state that because I don't want to have any stolen valor of anything. I did train with them, but I didn't finish, just to make that clear. For my early life, I was brought up in The Hague. That's the government capital of the Netherlands.
Not Amsterdam, just for a lot of people, because I'm Dutch, as you know, and people always think it's Amsterdam, but it's The Hague. Because my parents are from The Hague.
Yeah, well, if you want to use some drugs, you go to Amsterdam, and if you want to see some cultural stuff, you go to The Hague.
Exactly right.
So, I'm basically just a very privileged young man. I grew up with a loving family. I'm the youngest of three. I have an older sister and an oldest brother. And my father is a doctor, and my mother is a very strong woman who got into sales and leadership kind of jobs. My youth was just a lot of music and a lot of sports. I loved sports. I was in the national baseball team on the highest level. I went to the World Championships in Japan when I was only 12 years old. So I got to see a lot of the world already. And after that, I got a bit into the house scene in the 90s. That was a very cool time. So the sports were a bit less and the partying was a bit more. And I played with big guys like DJ Chesto, and they were not famous back then. But in the Netherlands, it was a really exciting scene. And I just emerged in that scene all the way.
I moved to the UK in 2003, so I spent the 90s mainly in Rotterdam. And I remember seeing Tiesto somewhere mid-90s in disco colors on the Hofplein. There were maybe 400 people there.
When I played with Chesto in Rijswijk in 1998, there were maybe 200 or 300 people. You cannot imagine that.
But those, because I only went there because a colleague had said, oh, this guy is great. I'd never heard of him. But there were a few that really saw the talent, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also the right manager, Dave Lewis, the man behind Chesto. I think he's a big part of the success of Chesto. But that's another podcast.
Yes.
Well, after when I turned 20, I went traveling the whole world. I was in Asia and I did all the things privileged young men do. But real life also had to come. So my parents were like, well, you have to do something with your life. I didn't become the famous DJ I wanted to be, even though I was doing it 24/7. That's the kind of guy I am. When I do something, I just immerse myself into it and I become that thing. But yeah, I had to find something else. It wasn't like I don't have any military people in my family. So it wasn't really a logical choice, but I was kind of smart. I did the VWO. That's like the highest level you can do in high school. I was physically good, but I didn't want to become a police officer because I hated the police and I don't like authority. So I was like, do I want to go to the defense department? Because it didn't really fit my personality, I think. But when the options dried up, I gave it a try.
Fantastic. Now, you then went into the Naval Academy and then subsequently Marines officer training. Did you already know at the start of Naval Academy that you were going to go down the Dutch Marines officer route? Do you have to choose early on? Or can people choose whether they want to go to the fleet or the Marines or whatever branch of the Navy?
You choose before you apply or when you apply, basically. It's possible to change afterwards, but once you're in the Navy or the administration or the Marines or the technical units of the Navy, you have to decide before. So when I started, I had to sign a contract of 12 years. I remember signing that contract when I was 21 and I'm signing away 12 years of my life. So that was quite a commitment. And the 12 years was basically like that because you got a 5-year training and also an education and you got payment right away. So because you get a lot of good education, after that you had to stay for 7 years operational to pay back the training basically. So when I started, I was in there for the Marines because I wanted to become a Marine. I wanted to be physically, I wanted to be outside, I wanted to do cool stuff basically.
Yeah. There is a shorter route, right? I remember I never came anywhere near serving in the Marines, but I did look at it as a young man. There was also a short option, isn't it? At the time it was called short-term volunteer. And that's true, isn't it? Where you commit to only 6 or 7 years, but you get a shorter trajectory. You're only really going to be a platoon commander for a few years. Is that still a thing, or maybe not anymore? Het heette KVV'er toen, kort verband vrijwilliger.
Yeah, yeah, that's possible because they do a different course. But I think you have to be a bit older, or you have to already finish the college degree.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the main part of that 5 years training I went in is the POTOM. That's the second year. So the second year you go into the POTOM, and that stands for the practical training for an officer of the Marine Corps. And that's the toughest part. It's 9 months, of which half of the time you're in the field. And basically, it's like this. When I start in the first year, you start with a really big group. You're a small group of all people who want to become a Marine officer or a Marines officer. But you also have the Navy officers and the technical and the administration. They form a big group. And the first year is together with that big group. Second year, when the POTOM starts, you get the small group of the Marine officers, and then there are new groups attached to that, the KVV, so the short-term guys. We call them the spijkerbroeken, because the jeans, we call them, because they didn't have training before, and they have a shorter term, in a shorter contract. And then you have the people who are already Marines, sometimes even sergeants. They've been in the lower ranks. They have a lot of experience and they want to become an officer, and they also have to do the POTOM. Together with that big group, when I started, it was 43 people made up of different categories.
Of course, to be clear, those 43 will have already been through a lot of selection to even get to that point, right? There's a lot of sort of pre-screening, I believe, isn't there?
Yeah, so, and at the end of the 9 months, we finished with 13. So 30 guys didn't make it.
And out of the 3 categories, so the ones from the Naval Academy, the short-term contract civilians who've already got a college degree, and then I guess the Americans call them studs, the ones that are already non-commissioned officers, are already section commanders or at least experienced Marines who have been identified as having officer potential. Out of those 3 groups, did any of the groups do better than the other in terms of attrition, or was it really completely random?
Well, in the beginning, of course, you have the group of the experienced, the studs as you call them, they have an advantage because the first part is basic skills. And the second part, until Christmas, you lead a squad. So that's 8 people. The first few months, they have a big advantage because they already know about that kind of stuff. After Christmas, after New Year, the platoon phase starts. And there it's actually a draw. Like, I mean, everybody's in a new terrain, and everybody has to grow. So overall, at the end, I didn't see one group that stood out, like had a bigger chance of succeeding. The group I was in was quite a big part of the whole group, and I think in the end we also made up more than half of the people who finished.
Those are the Naval Academy route.
Yeah.
People, yeah, and as you say, so it's that step from being a section commander up to maybe 8, 9, 10 people to being able to lead the entire. Is it called platoons in the Marines? Or it's changing?
Yeah, it's now rating a squadron, but in my time it was a platoon. And first section commander and then a platoon commander. But now it's the Marines have a lot of changes.
So platoon, 33 people in total, including the officer?
Yeah, 30 people.
Got it.
Yeah.
So as part of your training to be an officer in the Dutch Marines, you went to Wales. And that's one part that I can identify with. I was there last week, did a great event. There will be a video coming up, and in fact, when this airs, that will already be up on the channel. So here's the link to that. That is First in Events trilogy event, which was great. I go to Wales about 6-7 times a year. Probably a bit more because also for training, but I love to do load-bearing events. And of course, as part of your training, I understand, because we had a bit of a pre-chat, you also spent time at Sennybridge, right? Famous because of the UK Special Forces has its aptitude phase for both the SAS and the SPS combined selection conducted from Sennybridge. What was that like? Can you tell us a bit about your time in the UK as part of your POTOM, your officer course?
Well, I was in Lympstone 2 times in my training. The first time was during the platoon phase. After New Year's, you go to England for 3 weeks. There we have a lot of training on Lympstone, and then we also have a part where we go to Sunny Bridge and we do some live firing and patrolling and patrol harboring kind of missions with ambushes and a few attacks. And the second time was during my all-arms commando course, where I believe it was 12 weeks. We were in Lympstone. And the thing I remember most actually is, which I felt was really gruesome, was more like Dartmoor. Dartmoor was really, I felt like it was a strange area where you had, of course, the ground is really unstable, but also the weather could change in 1 hour. Sometimes we had like snow, rain, sun, wind. We had the craziest weather over there. So yeah, well, Sunny Bridge and also Dartmoor are places where if you don't have your basic skills and your basic soldiering in order, you're gonna basically die, basically. Yeah, so it's a really perfect area to train to become a good soldier.
So Sunny Bridge in Wales, did you say that was the first time where you had structured live fire exercises?
For the Netherlands is really small, so the areas where we can do live firing exercises are really limited. So we have to go abroad to train our officers. And Sunny Bridge is a very important part of our training for the officers, because there they have the first time an opportunity to do real live firing with the MARS firing overhead and the units moving. And you, as an officer, have to be able to show that you're capable of leading men with using real life firing, where people can die if you make a mistake. So that pressure and that exercises are very important in making our officers good at what they do.
And do you see that there are certain candidates in that phase who don't unfortunately get to progress? Is that a thing where some are able to do that and some may struggle?
I think in every phase, different people stand out. And also in that platoon phase and in England, you see certain people performing better than others. 9 months is a very long time. You're always examined by the staff. They look at you all the time. So nobody is able to perform 100% for 9 months. So everybody's going to have a few dips. If you have a longer dip, you probably don't make the training, but everybody maybe have some good parts and some parts that you perform a bit less. But in England, was just demanding. It was a demanding course because the British culture is very militarized and it's really tough. Physically, the weather conditions are tough. You're just under pressure.
Yes, yeah. Interesting. For those viewers who may not be aware, can you tell us a bit about the partnership between the Royal Marines and the Dutch Marines, who, by the way, both shared a big birthday last year? They're both 260 years old. Could you tell us a bit about that partnership between the Royal Marines and the Dutch Corps Mariniers?
Well, we go back a long, long time in the All-Arms Commando course, because you're together with a lot of guys, and we are the Dutchies, so we're a bit weird guys, and we talk a bit funny. But one of the jokes is that the founding father of the Marine Corps, the Dutch Marine Corps, he beat the English in, I think it was 1652, in the first English-Dutch war.
Right.
There were a few English-Dutch wars in that period. In the end, the English won the war. But the Dutch were very good in that time in building ships, and we had an advantage because we had some technological developments where we can build ships very quickly. So we used the windmills to cut wood and we could make ships very quickly.
Ik doe mijn best, meester. Het is zwaar werk.
But the English, they always say, well, you never beat us, that's not true and stuff. But unfortunately, it is true. We did beat you one time. But I think the relationship between the UK and the Netherlands is like you are our big brother. Like the culture is the same, we look the same, we talk the same, we have the same kind of humor. We like to laugh and have a dark sense of humor to get through hard times. So yeah, with the culture stuff, we are really engaged with each other. And the UKNL Amphibious Force actually 2 years ago celebrated their 50th anniversary. So our working together goes way back. The way that shows is that we work together in Norway and we go on exercises, and especially in the winter we work together because the basic skills and soldiering in the cold together with the amphibious part is very important part of our culture of the Marines. So that is also why we have some Dutch officers and lower ranks. They go to England and serve for a few years, and we have some people of the English forces go to the Netherlands. And so, well, we talk a lot and we interchange our knowledge and our experience.
And big picture, you talk about how close we are, but in terms of the big picture mission, do the Dutch Marines have the same mission in the Dutch Armed Forces as the British Marines have in the British Armed Forces, for as you know? Or are there nuances that you maybe became aware of during your All-Ops Commando course?
No, I think basically we have the same setup and the same missions in the defense forces and the way the Navy and the Marines working together. But you see some developments that are quite interesting, where basically now with the new reorganizing of the Marines, they are trying to become a tier 2 unit, basically. And I think that's
Future Commander Force. Yeah, they call it Future Commander Force.
Yeah,
what I read.
So I think that's the same development. The English Marines also adding the name Commando to it. I think in my time you were just the Royal Marines, but then you became the Royal Marine Commando, and I think the developments are quite similar in the Marine setup.
The way I read it, and I did a bit of prep, the way the Royal Marines describe it, the Future Commando Force is meant to turn them into an even more flexible, multi-skilled force, capable of operating in small, agile teams on littoral coastal operations, demanding a greater need for deep specialism.
Yeah. I mean, the most important development we see in warfare, of course, is that it's almost impossible to not be seen. And the way you operate has to be down at the lowest level. So you have to have people who are capable in a small unit to stay off the grid for a long time and operate without any support. Yeah. So that demands something of the people who work in the Marines. That sort of is the way, the things we also ask of our special forces. So you have to get the level of the regular Marines higher, basically, and organize in a different way so they can operate under the grid for a long time.
It's a tough subject, really, but you're absolutely, from what I understand, absolutely right. Where, for instance, in the Middle East, where you have this golden hour, if somebody is wounded, it's highly likely a helicopter can get to them. In a future war, that's less likely. To your point, if it's a small unit operating in a remote area, the focus on self-care becomes greater, because it's no longer a given that a Chinook is going to be able to get to you within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now let's zoom in. So you've now graduated the POTOM, you've become commissioned into the Dutch Marines. And then how did you get to the start line of the All-Arms Commander course? Like, what happened in between and how did that come on your radar?
Well, it's basically a part of our training, and not everybody gets a chance to go to this training at the end of the phase where we do the basic training stuff. Like,
can I ask, were you already a commissioned officer or not yet when you went to Lympstone?
No, not yet. So I was a second lieutenant, so I had only the curl, not yet the bar. And I think 3 or 4 of us, I think with 3 guys from our training. So in total we were at 7 or 8, I think. So yeah, there are only a few spots that can go to the training, and then you have sort of a selection in our little group. We had some basic selection part, and then I was one of the guys who got selected to go to England. So we call it sort of a phase of where you do stage, stage.
Internship, I guess?
Yes, internship. And we went to the Norwegian Army, and there we learned how to operate in the cold. The All-Arms Commando course is basically to learn our officers that we work with English and also to develop their skills further. Even though, in all honesty, all the things I learned in the Arms Commander course, I already did in the POTOM. It was not like I learned anything new. The challenging part is the way the English do it, because it's a tough training. So physically, it was quite demanding.
Yes, and of course, because you work close together, someone like you then would be able to help, be a liaison if it ever was necessary.
Exactly, yeah. The liaison function is very important in this part. For us Dutch people, we are only a small force. And for us, it's very important to have a liaison. Also, my training in the French Legion is a liaison. With the Belgium, we do liaison training, and also with the Norwegian Army. And yeah, it's very important for us.
So, day one, week one. So, did you take the train or did you fly? I'm just trying to get it. It seems like such an adventure. So, how do you actually get to Lympstone?
We went by car, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so we drove over there because we have a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's a day trip to get there, and then it's a big adventure. And we already knew Lympstone, but in the POTOM, you are an officer and you sleep in a different area than when you do the All Arms Commander course. So you're back to the even more basic stuff of Lympstone. And in the beginning, when you get there, I mean, the instructors are quite impressive. They have the small sleeves with the tattoos and the big muscles. And you're like, okay, we're going to have a hard time here. But I remember one of the first tests was like a running test. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I'm quite a good runner. And I remember, and that also is very typical, because for me, the British are like, if you give them an order, they're just going to go all in. They're very all-in kind of guys. I am more a calculating guy. Mm-hmm. I always think, well, what's our real mission here? How long are we going to be here? And how are we going to get through this in the best kind of way? That's the way I always did it in all my trainings, because it's always a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I understand the thing where you have to show that you can go all out, and I really understand that. But I remember the first test was like, 5K run in Lympstone. And I was like, okay, 5K, how fast can I run that? And I sort of know how fast I have to go to max out on that tempo. But I remember the start line was, and the Dutch guys were like this, and the British guys next to us, and the starting signal, and the British guys just went like all out, and I was like, holy shit, if you run like this, you're not gonna make that for 5Ks. I mean, you're gonna die. So I remember like, oh shit, they're gonna think we're not running hard enough. But at the last part of the run, of course, we made up because the guys couldn't sustain. So that was the first part where I noticed that I think we had a little bit more experience in tough trainings than the guys we were with. So
talk us through, because at Lympstone makes civilians into Royal Marines, but obviously the All Arms Commander course is slightly nuanced. Can you maybe explain to us what that's, because the full course is 32 weeks for a civilian turning up at Lympstone. Of course, you're not a civilian. So tell us about the All Arms Commander course and what is its purpose and what sort of candidates does it take?
Of course, I only know it from my point of view. I'm not in the Royal Marines. The function of the All Arms Commander course is that the Royal Marines work together with different units. And if you have to work with the Royal Marines, it's a good thing that you know how they work and what they're made of. That's one part. And the second part is that if you did the training, you get a lot of respect. So if you have to work with the Marines and you can wear your Green Beret, mm-hmm. It's easier to work together.
Yes.
Yeah. So for us, if we get our Green Beret, we can only wear the Green Beret when we are in England. So when we go back to the Netherlands, we get a little dagger on our suit, but that's it.
Because it's not part of the official battle dress, right, of the Dutch uniform.
No, well, we can only wear a dagger on our uniform, but not the Green Beret. But once you are a liaison officer and you get deployed for a longer time in England and you did the All Arms Commander course, you're going to get a lot of more respect from your fellow Marines.
Of course. Yeah.
So what I did is make a training and just distill the most important part. Basically, the All Arms Commando course is a bit shorter. It's only 12 weeks, but I do all the important parts that are in the longer training, they do as well. So you have, at the end, you have Commando Tests. That is the basic field, what's it called? Endurance course, 74 minutes. Then you have the speed march, 12-mile speed march. And you have the obstacle course, of course. And the last test is the 30-miler. So you do the same tests as the normal Marine Commando course. Yeah, you learn. And you also have to do the regain and all the stuff the normal commander also have to do. The bottom field sessions. You do all that stuff. And you learn how to operate as a section and do an attack at the end. So, yeah, you do the stalking and patrolling and all the stuff.
It makes sense because the full course is for civilians. And of course, to get to the AAC, no one is a civilian.
No, but the level of the participants is variable. Some guys are very experienced and maybe from the parachute regiment. And some guys are maybe a pilot. So it depends.
One of the things that was obviously big for you, because you, at that point where you had your main weapon, was it the Dimaco C7 at the time in 2007?
Yeah, C7 was our weapon, and afterwards C8, Dimaco. And during the commando course, we also have to work with the English gear and the English weapons. So we work with the SA-80, and that's a piece of shit, basically. It just, if you look at it, there's already rust on it. So when you go out in the field, I never did so much polishing and cleaning on a weapon as I did in the All Arms Commando course. It's a fucking pain in the ass.
Is it heavier?
No. What I like about it, it's quite small. So when you're running with it for like with an endurance course, with your first line, you can really get it out of the way and you can move properly. And also engaging it, it's quite. I like the size of it.
Yeah.
But that's basically all I like about it.
And as an officer, were you treated differently from other candidates? For instance, were you put in charge of team exercises more, or was everyone treated exactly the same?
Well, we're all basically treated as if we're less than the shit on the sergeant's shoe. So we're all worth nothing.
Yeah.
I think everybody just gets their turns. And I think the Dutchies in the beginning, I don't think they give us the leading roles because there are some guys that are more experienced in that stuff. But it's a funny story that we were doing actually quite good. The Dutch guys, we were physically strong and we like to work hard. And so in the beginning, we did really well, actually. But I don't remember exactly, but somewhere halfway, maybe after 6 weeks, we did an exercise where we had to dig in. And that was actually one of the hardest parts I felt of the training because you had to dig for 72 hours of digging. And I remember during that exercise, there was a visit of one of the Dutch officers that was based in England. So that was a guy, I think it was a Lieutenant Colonel, I don't know the English name, sorry. It was a high-ranked officer. And I remember he was talking to us and we were all fucked up, of course, but we were like, well, actually we are doing really well and we are strong and we are happy. We're doing a good job here. That was basically our message to our Dutch officer. And I remember that night already, something changed.
Oh my God.
And the English staff was not so friendly anymore, and we had a really hard time. So they just put another gear into it, and at the end when we got our berets and at the end party, one of the sergeants of the English staff he told the whole story. That was basically that our Dutch officer came to them and he said, well, you have to be harder on the Dutch guys because they have it way too easy. So thank you very much, Dutch colleague.
Yes.
That's a really nice thing to do.
So in terms of before you get to the tests, what does the day-to-day look like? Are there different phases to it as you move closer to the actual commander test? Your day-to-day, you either wake up at the barracks or in the field. Can you maybe talk us through a typical day, so to speak?
Yes, it's a bit too long ago to exactly know because I did so many trainings. It's almost 20 years ago. You had field weeks and field exercises, and you had some parts where you work from Lympstone into the back area of Lympstone for a day or 2 days. In the beginning, you get all your gear and stuff, and you have one building where you work from. The weeks are from Monday till Saturday morning is your last engagement, and then Saturday night and Sunday you're off. Well, the field weeks are, then you just get your gear and you go out in the field, and then you get some lessons in the field, and you do some, of course you do a lot of navigating, you learn how to fight, you learn how to patrol, you learn how to do a patrol harbor, all that stuff you learn in the field. And the days on Lympstone are, well, you start at 5 o'clock. You get something to eat, and then you have your first physical tests and training on the bottom field. A big part of commander training is that you have to be good at the ropes. So one of the things a lot of guys don't make it is you have to do a regain with the gear. So you have to go on the rope, on top of the rope, and you have to go under the rope and hang on it, and then release your feet. So you only hang on your hands, and you have to get your feet back on the rope. A lot of guys struggle with that.
Drop it! Drop it! Come on, like you, drop my feet. Come on, Murphy! Oh, nice one, Murphy! Robbie's little man. Oh, nice, lads. Did you kill something? Yeah. Oh, Robbie. Take your time getting off. Don't touch your own good on, Murphy. That's where they come from.
And also the climbing of the rope climbing is something a lot of guys think is very tough. And I remember one test, for instance, you have to do a 200-meter sprint with a guy on your neck.
Right.
And I think you have to do that in 90 seconds or something. So, that you have to work towards making that kind of tests. Also, you're in the swimming pool, and then, of course, you get some lessons all the time. So, it's a tough day. And then during the weeks on the base, you maybe sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And in the field, of course, you only sleep maybe 1 hour or 2 hours a night.
Yes. In terms of simple things like contact drills, contact front is something you had already trained a lot in the POTOM. Did you notice any differences between things like that, contact drills or setting up an OP? Was it exactly the same or quite different in terms of basic soldiering drills?
No, the basic soldiering of the UK and NL is very similar. Even our radio communications of the Dutch Marines is in English.
Right.
Because we want to be able to
sort of plug and play if you operate together.
Yeah, so of course there are going to be some minor changes in some tactics and stuff, but the way we work from a patrol harbor, we prepare, we do our briefings and stuff, it is all basically the same. The way you go on a recce patrol, the way you do an observation post, there are not a lot of.
Great to hear.
Yeah, there are not a lot of differences. Of course, in the details, we would have some differences.
And then in terms of the role of the patrol commander and command style, ability to make decisions at your discretion, the way you communicate with NCOs and other ranks, did you feel that is also very similar, or does each country have its own sort of vibe and style?
Well, I think there's, for instance, cultural, there's a big difference between the Marines and the army, the Dutch army. But I think the Dutch Marines and the UK Marines, they have quite similar style of leading the troops. And I think, of course, what I really like about the English is they are so good in communicating to the point. You know what I mean? With a few words, saying what you need to say. And really good at distilling the mission and your targets and your planning process. The way you lead is something I really learned a lot from.
Awesome. I'm a fellow Dutch here, as you know. I arrived here in 2003 thinking I'll be an expat for a few years, and now 2 children, an English wife, and 20 years later I'm still here. So there's something that keeps me here, and I definitely enjoy both the banter, the humor, and also the premium on humor. It's a bit of a sidestep, but when you're the funny guy in the Netherlands, that's great. Everyone likes a funny guy, but it doesn't necessarily enhance your status. What I noticed instantly in the UK, somebody who likes a good laugh and is really witty there's a bigger premium on it almost. It was very interesting. Where in some other cultures, we've all had a laugh. Now let's get back to serious matters. And I'm not talking about military. I'm actually more talking about, because I work in the city, I work in finance. Well, that's one of the things I really liked. It's just that there is a real premium on being witty, and not always let's get back to being serious.
I think the most important thing I learned from the English is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. Personally, I also have a tendency to be quite serious, to be a bit dark. And I learned that under the toughest environment and the toughest jobs, it's vital that you have the guy who still makes a joke and can laugh about the situation you're in. That's one of the most important cultural aspects you need in a good military organization. That's my opinion. Because you're always in the shit, only the depth varies, is one of the quotes we have above our mirror in the office. And, well, that's part of the job, isn't it? So if you're already in the shit, you might as well laugh about it. That's a value that's very high appraised also by the staff during the All Arms Commando course. So also the guy who became best man of the training, even when it was raining, even when it was really tough, he still was able to make a laugh and get us through it. So that's, I think, the main lesson I always remembered from that course.
I couldn't agree more. That's great. Another thing that I'm interested in, you did the All Arms Commando course in 2007. So Marines had just started gaining operational experience. They'd been in Afghanistan, I guess, for a few years. Iraq was spinning up. Did you notice a feedback loop was developing? Like, were you being told this drill, we're now going to do like this, where we used to do it like that? And there could be little things, but I don't know. Is that something that you noticed?
No, the first time I actively can remember that we had a feedback loop was in a stage later in my career when I was doing the Special Forces training, and the first Dutch Marines came back with proper experience under fire. So that was a few years later. I think from 2008, 2009, the first guys came back. And the most important feedback loop I can remember with the counter-terrorist unit was that we were founded in the 70s, and then they had some real engagements, of course. They had a situation with a train with a Moluccan terrorist.
I think, yeah.
But after that, of course, there was a long time when whole generations of Marines didn't really have a lot of experience under proper fire. And Afghanistan was the first time people came back with real life experience of fighting. And the biggest change that came about was that the speed in which we were operating was unrealistic, according to the people who had experience under fire. So we slowed down our methods and we changed some methods where we took a little bit more time because in real life, when the bullets are flying, you operate a bit different than when you have a period of 10 years where you don't fight, actually. You're only training with blanks and stuff, and you start to get faster and faster, but it's not really realistic. So the more methodical move and a methodical clearance of a building, for instance, that was one of the biggest lessons that came from Afghanistan, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So slow is fast, right? I've heard it's slow down and not make that mistake. But I couldn't agree more. It's so good to take in slowing down and making sure you don't make mistakes.
Well, yeah, because especially counter-terrorist, I mean, it's a lot of speed, it's violence of action, and of course that's very important, especially when your mission is to save hostages. In some ways, a bigger risk because you have to save hostages. So there is a difference, of course, in fighting in Afghanistan, where sometimes you only fight against Taliban. You don't have to worry about hostages. So there's a difference, of course, between maybe those two kinds of operations, according to the speed you're moving.
Yeah.
But we did take into account those lessons very strict and tried to be realistic about it.
Yes, of course. Then you get to the end and you have the Commando Tests. Which of the Commando Tests did you think was the hardest?
Well, the Commando Test was quite a story because the first test was quite easy for me. That was, I think, the endurance course. I'm an endurance kind of guy. So I like endurance. I liked the endurance course, and I think I was one of the fastest of the group. I believe maybe 72 minutes or something like that. And then I think the obstacle course was good. Yeah, it was only a few minutes, only 7 minutes maybe. But then in the weekend we went out, and then we had a very hard accident. So we were driving back on Saturday night.
Right. And
somebody with high speed drove into our car. And I remember waking up on the dashboard. And the flashlights of the ambulance were already there. So I was out for a few minutes. My friend was outside of the car. The car was now half the size, I think. So we went into the hospital and we had, of course, some damage. So when we started on Monday, I remember I had a big black eye and a pain in my head, but because we were already there for 12 weeks, there was no chance in hell I wouldn't finish. So we did the 12-mile speed march, and that was okay. But then the last day was the 30-miler, and for me, I was really at the end of my capabilities, basically, physically. I have some images of somebody filmed some parts of it, and I don't think I was totally there. I was just surviving. So for me, the 7 or 8 hours was one of the toughest moments in the whole course, yeah.
I maintain a hard routine community for my channel on Facebook, and I'm fortunate to have a few former Marines in the channel. I told them that I was going to interview you. They were both really excited about that. Stephen Maguire, who is a long-time member of the channel, he says, I'm pretty sure the Dutch were known for their maritime security skills, boarding ships, etc. Mark, we talked about that at the beginning. And then he asks, what time did Mark get on endurance? Stephen remembers. He said, I did it in 69:40, which he didn't think was very fast, but it was at least a passing grade. Do you remember what time you had, Mark?
Well, no, I don't remember exactly, but I thought the limit was 74 minutes. And I believe I did it in 72, but I don't remember exactly. But if it was 69, then he was faster than me. So congratulations. Historically, the Dutch are quite good at the physical parts because one of our captains, Leungen, his name was, he was on the obstacle course for years for the best time. I don't think, I'm wondering if he's now if his time is beaten already, but for years in that period, he was the fastest. And I think it was a pain in the ass for the English that the Dutch guy was the fastest time on the obstacle course.
Another question from Steve. Did you do the whole course at Lympstone, or was the BTOP, the 2-week trashing period, at the Citadel in Plymouth? I think he refers to that the initial few weeks are particularly brutal. Do you remember, did you go to Plymouth, or was it actually at Lympstone?
No, I believe we did everything in Lympstone. Yeah.
Another member of the group, Dougie, said he passed the All Arms in 2009. Okay, so it's 2 years after you. He served with 2-9 Commando Royal Artillery. The Dutch Marines always came with a good reputation. I served with them in Norway. I didn't have any on my course, but we did have a US Marine captain who failed at week 6. Which brings me to the question, what was the attrition rate like? So can you recall how many people started and how many people got through?
Yeah, we all got through. But I think in the years after that, sometimes not everybody made it. But in my year, we all made it, all the Dutch guys.
And what about the rest? What about the whole, because it wasn't just you in your course, or was it?
No. Ooh, I don't remember the numbers, to be honest. But I do remember there are quite a few that didn't make it. So I have to check their photos and maybe I can see a bit. But I believe we finished, I think, with 20 or something, 25.
Started with maybe 45 or something? Right?
I honestly cannot remember exactly.
In terms of the balance of, obviously all Arduous courses are a mix of fitness and mindset, and I know the two go hand in hand. But do you have strong views about, do you remember what the balance was? I mean, was it more a fitness course, or was it really about operating under pressure, or in terms of, was it 50-50, or do you have any view on that?
Well, I think it's all related. I mean, if you're physically capable, you're going to come under stress a bit later than the rest, and that's going to be an advantage. But everybody in that course, everybody is going to come into a situation where you're physically exhausted. And then it's all about mindset. And usually the guys who seem to be really, really fit physically struggle more with when they cannot cope with the physical part, strangely enough. So it depends. I think it's all related. So you have to be physically in order. You have to be strong. You have to be an endurance type of guy. You don't need a lot of muscles. You need the endurance. You need to be able to run. You need to be able to climb. You need to be fast on the obstacle course. And you need to go on for a long time without good food, without good sleep, with bad weather. So, well, mentally, and the pressure is going to wear you down if you let it. So you have to be able to also find a good body, because you cannot do it alone. You have to do it together. You have to find support from your fellow teammates. Sometimes you help another one, and sometimes you need a little hand. And the big resilience is not only in yourself, but also in if you're able to be a good team player, and help, because sometimes we needed a little bit help from the English guys in some parts when we didn't understand something, or some gear that they already worked with and they helped us. And sometimes we could help the guys with some parts where we already had some experience with navigating, or maybe the patrol harbor. You have to invest in the group and not be focused on yourself. But physically, the All Arms Commander course stood out for me as really, really demanding. And you have to be strong and be able to endure.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point you made earlier, where those that are very fit, yes, they get to that point of stress later, but then sometimes that means that they're less used to coping with it.
Exactly.
That's a very interesting nuance, because I always think as long as you're as fit as you can be, you fly through everything. No, but the less fit person is more used to being in that red zone. I hadn't actually thought of that. That's very interesting.
Just to be clear, I'm not some kind of specialty. I don't have I'm actually average. I'm quite good at all the things I do, but I never stand out on anything. I'm not the best runner. I'm not the strongest in the fitness. I'm a good swimmer, but I'm not the best swimmer. But I'm capable of learning fast, and I'm able to get a good level on everything. And I think that's important to be a good soldier, because it's not about the one who sprints the fastest, It's not about the one who can run the longest, but it's the guy who can do it all good enough.
Yeah, that's a great point. Then that moment comes where you've passed all of the commando tests. I think the last one is a 30-miler on Dartmoor, is that correct?
Yeah.
And what did you think of that event? Or did you find that challenging, the 30-miler?
Yeah, for me, the ferdipeelen, also because of the car crash, was really demanding. I really had to dig really, really deep. I was really struggling. I got into my little cocoon and just found a way to get through it, but it was really tough.
And then I guess you get close to the end, they stop you, you get yourself sorted out, and then you have the moment, because you get the beret immediately after, isn't that right, after the 30-miler?
Yeah.
So what did that mean to you, as you were, what you had achieved thus far was you were second lieutenant in the Dutch Marines. What did it mean for you to get that the British Commando beret?
Yeah, of course, it's a really nice moment because you've been working hard for it. You finally made it. You feel proud, and you cannot really enjoy the moment because you're so tired. But after that, there's some drinks, and we were just really happy. But in all honesty, for us, it's only a little stepping stone of a really long period. I mean, nobody really cares. When you come back, it's okay, well done, and now here's your next deployment. So in all honesty, it was really a cool moment, but at the time, it also was just another stepping stone.
Yeah. And then, as you said earlier, you're not allowed to wear it day in, day out, only when you are deploying with British Marines. Any specific lessons from the All Arms Commando course that you did find yourself applying in the rest of your military career?
Well, one of the things that I really learned was, of course, what I already said, is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. But if you talk about more the soldiering, I think the way they approach their basic soldiering, so the discipline of cleaning your weapon, the discipline of your wet and dry drills in the field, they really stamped it into us, and we felt it because we were punished enough when we didn't do it right. So the basic soldiering was one of the parts that was really something I learned from the British Marines. So thank you for that, because I mean, you need that. You need that. After I went on deployments like Afghanistan, you sort of see how all those lessons you've been taught are applied in the real missions. And then it really is, nobody's looking at you anymore. It has to be internalized. And that internalizing the discipline of taking that extra step, cleaning your weapon, even if you're very tired after a mission of 5 days, that's something that stays with me for the rest of my life. So even if you're tired, you still have to do the basic stuff. And if you don't do the basic stuff, there's no sleeping for you. You just have to finish the job.
Yes. And you were when we had a pre-chat, you used the term skills and drills. I think you turned.
Yeah.
And you also shared how during the course you would spend your nights cleaning that weapon.
Yeah. 5 hours of cleaning in the field. You come back from an exercise or a patrolling and then a navigating exercise at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know you're going to have an inspection at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you think you have a few hours of sleep, but you don't, because you start cleaning your weapon and there's rust everywhere, and you just you want to sleep, but you clean your weapon, and even then you don't usually make it through the inspection, because they always find something. It doesn't matter how hard you try, sometimes it's not enough, and you have to learn that lesson, because that's also how life is. Even if you do everything you can, sometimes it's not enough, and you just have to deal with it. That's just life. Get over yourself and do it better next time. Don't make any excuses. Don't say they're so strict and they do this and they do that. No, don't do that, because if you do that, you sign over your power. Keep the power within and learn and keep growing and become stronger every day.
So those are some fantastic lessons. And I'm mindful we're getting to the final stages of the interview. I will just mention, then you deploy. you, and again, that's worth its own podcast, so we won't go into the detailed analysis of your deployment, but it was Afghanistan. You commanded the troops there at a forward operating base, as if I understood, and then you came back and you decided to attempt NLMARSOF selection. How many years between being commissioned as an officer and then when did you think about trying for Maritime Special Forces?
Well, I'm one of the lucky officers that have a very nice trajectory. In 2007, I became a commando at the Royal Marines. In 2008, I became a Platoon Commander. And 6 months later, I was in Afghanistan, leading a small team of 4 people, 4 Marines in a operational mentoring and liaisons team. And very self-supporting, a lot of room to operate. So that was the best mission I did, basically, because it was so exciting in that time. And then
when you said mentoring, you were working with a partner force, or you were working with local, or what do you mean mentoring?
We were working with the Afghan National Army.
Oh, yeah. Oh, got you. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we were trained while you fight, they say.
Right.
So we had to train them, but we were not on a base. We had to train them during the operation. So we went out from the first day on operations, and during the operations, we had to make them better. That was really, really challenging. And after that, I came back, and then 6 weeks later, I went to the French Legion. I was there for 8 weeks, but I didn't finish. I came back, and then it was Christmas. And after Christmas, I started my training for the NLMARSOF, and that was 43 weeks of training. So I made it through, and I became one of the 2 officers that got through. And I became Platoon Commander of the counter-terrorist unit for 4 years.
But that was really a lot of close quarter skills, I would imagine. Intervening in urban environments, things like that.
Yeah, there's different stages in that training. That's I think is a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
The part of the counter-terrorist training, it was about 17 weeks of only shooting, and only like one day shooting, the other day doing tactics. And you learn all the nitty-gritties of counter-terrorist operations, and then also, of course, in the maritime setting.
So in the Netherlands, interesting about the Maritime Special Forces, so you split off into frogmen, mountain leaders, intervention services, and let me know if I forget anything. But that early stage, are all NLMARSOF candidates together in a sort of an aptitude type of phase? Am I correct? Or do they go in with a specific brief of you will be mountain leader or you will be diver?
Yeah, well, the counter-terrorist unit has its own history from the 70s.
En bij de punt besloot de regering gewapenderhand daaraan een einde te maken.
Godsamme.
Straaljagers vliegen met oorverdovend lawaai over de trein. Binnen 3 minuten bevrijden de mariniers de passagiers en stellen ze de trein veilig. Bij de beëindiging van de gijzeling kwamen 2 gegijzelden om. 6 gegijzelden en 2 mariniers raakten gewond. Van de 9 gijzelnemers kwamen er 6 om het leven.
The frogmen have their own history from further back. They are actually a separate unit. And then you have the mountain leaders who have their separate history. Around 2006, because the people in the special forces are so limited, we have also a shortage of good men. When there was a mission, there was a lot of strain on the capacities of the different units. So they decided to make NLMARSOF and join those 3 capabilities together. So you actually had the merging of different units into one. And you had a situation of getting through that because you have the people who were in that unit before and the units who come in new. And there's a difference because some of the guys just have to be retrained. But if you come in new into the Special Forces, you first become an NLMARSOF operator. And after that, you specialize into either diving or the mountain training. Or you go to the counter-terrorist unit.
And that is called an aptitude phase. I think that very first stage.
Aptitude is actually a way of diminishing the attribution.
Yeah, attrition.
So because they do a 3-week aptitude where they really shake the tree. It's really tough. They put you through all kinds of strains and different training. And at the end of the 3 weeks, the guys who make it, the staff is going to do everything they can to make you an operator. The whole vibe changes. In the first 3 weeks, it's going to be real tough on you. And in the second phase, it's going to be really mature, as we say. It's going to be tough, just like it was in the old days. But they're not going to scream at you all that bullshit stuff. It's really mature, and you just have to do what you have to do. Most of the guys make it. Some guys get injured, of course, and some guys don't make it. But the percentages of people who make it through that phase is quite high.
Is any one of the courses you've done tougher than others, or is it just apples and pears?
No, because I was the first year of NLMARSOF. So after that, a few changes were made. The aptitude didn't exist when I started. One of my colleague, Dennis, who made it through in my year, he was the one who sort of developed the aptitude later on. So
been on your podcast, I think.
Yeah, Dennis was on my podcast. So in the beginning, what they did, they got some elements of all kinds of old trainings and they merged it. So we again went to Sunny Bridge for the Marine Recce course. That was one part, and one part was the counter-terrorist training. So what I told you earlier, the training to become an operator in the counter-terrorist unit before was a training of 17 weeks. And they just took that part and put it into a bigger training where you also became a Special Forces operator. An operator is, you learn the Special Forces type of missions also, and then also in a maritime environment. So you also get swimming and also the climbing the ladders and all the counter-terrorist operations on the sea. The water.
We'll move on because, as you said, that warrants its own podcast. And thanks very much for sharing a bit about that. In summary, you've passed some very arduous training and selection courses. I always get a few people in the Facebook group who are interested and maybe looking at a career in armed forces among the younger members. Are there any tips you would give to anyone, or whether it's basic Army training, basic Marine training, or an experienced military man or woman who is looking at an arduous course? What tips would you give in the run-up to any sort of military training and selection course?
Well, the most important part is that if you want to pursue this type of career, you have to be sure you can immerse yourself into it. You are going to be your number one priority, and you have to make sure that your life is set up to carry that. So if you have a relationship, you have to make sure that she or he, I don't know what you're into, but that she is on board, that she is able to manage this kind of life. So it has to be a really strong woman who can make sure that you can perform. You are into this, and you have to be into it with all the resources you have. So you have to make sure that all the randvoorwaarden, what's it called?
Well, I guess peripheral conditions, that doesn't make the circumstances.
All the circumstances around you in your life are set up for success. And I think a lot of people underestimate what that means. So they are only focused on training, and of course it's very important to train, and you have to get all the tests and you have to make it, but that's only such a small part of success in this type of environment and this type of career. You really have to be good at working in an unpredicted way. You have to be able to go out and be gone for a few months every so often, and then a few weeks there and then a few weeks there. It's really strenuous on your life. And you have to choose that life and really immerse yourself into it. And when you come home, you just want to have peace. You have to have a place where you can have your friends and your wife and maybe kids and everything. So make sure you nurture that part of your life. I did not succeed in that part. A lot of guys get a divorce. So the tip for me is always to really choose wisely and make sure that if you find some people, friends, and a good wife, that you are very good to them. Make sure that you have a loving environment to be able to go out on the war and fight for your country.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that, Mark. We're moving on from the military part of your life. You now have a company. Would you maybe talk a little bit about your company and perhaps plans you have for the future?
Yeah, well, I host the Scherpschutters podcast. It's the biggest military-style podcast from the Netherlands. We have like 200 to 300,000 downloads a month. I'm privileged to be able to talk to a lot of really interesting people, and I really enjoy that. So I just want to build on from that and nurture my community and the people who want to become part of the defense forces, people who are already in the defense part, and also the veterans. It's very important for the mental health and for the sustainability have a platform like Scherpschutters, because according to all the messages I get, it's very important for a lot of people. So I'm very happy to be able to sustain that and to make it bigger and go on for a few more years. Next to that, I do a lot of really cool projects. I sometimes train people in working under pressure. I make documentaries. So I do a lot of fun things next to it. But my main focus is to build on the success we already have with Sharpshooters and make it a really valuable asset for the defense forces in the future.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for that, Mark. And I can certainly say from personal experience, it's one of the podcasts that really inspired me. I think as a Gritty Soldier, Prepared Pathfinder, and Sharpshooters are probably before I started making my own videos. I did a few events and I thought next time I'm just going to take a camera and I'm going to edit a bit, and then all of a sudden I had a few thousand views, and it's obviously it's more of a hobby for me at this moment. But my point being, you've certainly inspired people like me. Thanks very much for sharing your story. So I think with that, we're going to finish.
No, thank you very much for inviting me and listening to my really bad Dutch Marine English. So thank you very much for having me. And like you say, it's really cool to hear that you're also inspired by the stories and just start doing something with it. And that's what I always want to say. We say, rammen met je kadaver. That means going forward, even it doesn't matter how hard the times are, just keep grinding and do the hard routine. So thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. And with that, I always leave it in the same way, guys. As always, see you in the hills.